Hogwarts is a magical Scottish castle that gaslit us all into thinking British people could be cool. Since 1997, J.K. Rowling has invited us all to imagine ourselves going to wizard school, putting on our funny hats, and going to frog class. Generations of children and sad adults have fantasized about going to Hogwarts, what house they'd be sorted into, what spells they would learn, how many times they would kiss Neville Longbottom. Research shows that 77% of my audience would love to go to Hogwarts, or in other words, over half of you desire extreme mental anguish followed by sudden death. Everyone, and I mean everyone that says they want to go to Hogwarts is lying. You would have a complete mental breakdown within a week of setting foot in that academic saw trap. That is, if you can get that far before you brain yourself falling down the staircase. So enough of my gerrymandering. Here's why Hogwarts is a bad school and you don't want to go there. So here's our ground rules going in. Number 1, I'm considering all official canonical sources. Yes, that does include J.K. Rowling's Twitter account, and yes, that does mean that all your counter arguments are already wrong. No one cares about your headcanon, Shannon. This is real life, fake life. And rule number 2, this is an entirely literal textual analysis. We're just looking at the world as it's presented in the books, because your average 12-year-old doesn't care about the symbolism of the Forbidden Forest. He just cares that he's running from man-eating spiders. And look, at the end of the day, I know these are just books. I know they exist primarily to tell a story, not to establish some structurally sound alternate magical reality. But that's not as funny. So put on that sorting hat full of lies and let's jump right into it. Except actually no, that's wrong, you're wrong. The sorting hat is only on student's head for at most 5 minutes at a time during a true hat stall, and lice live very close to your scalp, meaning that it is very unlikely that lice will be transferred from student to student during the sorting hat process. Get your Bush League junk out of here, we are professionals! Wizards get to Hogwarts at 11 years old. On their first day, they're sorted into one of the school's 4 houses, based on their personality, their values, and whether or not they're one of the main characters. Now take a second and think about that. Who were you at 11 years old? Who did you want to be at 11 years old? Are you that person now? Of freaking course not, because you were a dumb and stupid kid, and now you're older and not a dumb and stupid kid, unless you still want to go to Hogwarts, in which case you are not a kid, but you are still pretty dumb and also stupid too as well. That's the rules. I don't make them, I do make them. I wrote this video. The head donkus himself, Mr. Albuquerque Dumbledore, even said in his own words that there's a problem here. Specifically, he said, and I quote, "Sometimes I think we sort them too early." Wow, you sometimes think that publicly categorizing children by the still fragile and developing personalities and immediately roping them into the centuries of infighting that built up around your institution is maybe sometimes a bad idea that could be harmful to them in the long run? You must be the smartest guy ever. You're so wise. See, there's a little thing in psychology called labeling theory. Quick disclaimer here, I'm not a psychologist, I have no training in psychology, I'm in desperate need of therapy and haven't gone yet because I've been too busy putting this together. Anyways, labeling theory, to put it simply, says that if you call someone one thing for a long enough time, they will start to act like and eventually become that thing. Call someone a criminal for long enough, and they'll start doing crimes. Call someone a nerd long enough, and they'll convince themselves that, yeah, it's worth it to watch Doctor Who past season 4. So from the moment an 11-year-old student gets to Hogwarts and gets the stanky old hat on their head, because there's no way they wash that thing, they are publicly categorized, classified, labeled, and put into a box of expectations in front of all of their peers. All of your peers now have an idea of who you're supposed to be, and they're going to be reinforcing that constantly for the next 7 years of your life. If you're in Gryffindor, you gotta be a brave boy.
I'm a brave boy.
If you're in Hufflepuff, you gotta be a loyal boy. If you're in Slytherin, you gotta be evil. Yeah, there is a chance that after your first day, 3/4 of the student body will absolutely despise you and hate your guts, but we'll get to that later. At Hogwarts, your identity is basically set for you from day one. Your personality is publicly chosen, and you better not step out of line. You know that one kid in high school who had way too much of their self-worth tied up in how good their grades were? Imagine forcing that mindset onto a full fourth of the school. That's Ravenclaw. If your grades slip, you're not a struggling student. You're a bad Ravenclaw. The same goes for all the houses. P.P. Pewtergroot was a scumbag, but not nearly the biggest scumbag in the entire world. But people hate him as if he was the biggest scumbag in the entire world. Why? Because he was a bad Gryffindor. Why do I have my best takes right when the video ends? Why do I have to do this to myself? If you're a Gryffindor and you don't snort crack in the Forbidden Forest and jump off the roof of the greenhouse, you're nothing. If you're a Hufflepuff and you question your loyalty for a moment, even for a second, you're nothing. If you're a Slytherin and you're not constantly ambitious and cunning and racist, Hogwarts designed the most perfect, elegant, streamlined alt-right radicalization pipeline known to man, and called it Slytherin. In my research, I found that a disturbing number of people openly call themselves Slytherin, as if it isn't the house based on racism. Some people like to pretend it wasn't always like that. That's just because of the whole Voldemort thing that all these pureblood supremacy ideas have been coming to the forefront here in Slytherin. Well, I have facts and logic that would beg to differ. The Sorting Hat was enchanted by the 4 founders of Hogwarts to give them each the kind of students they preferred. Rowena Ravenclaw, for example, wanted smarty-pants nerds. Godric Gryffindor wanted protagonists. Helga Hufflepuff took anyone because she's cool. She's the cool one. We like her. And lastly, the Salazar Slytherin. What kind of guy was he? Well, he was the guy that built the Chamber of Secrets and left a giant snake in the walls for the express purpose of committing genocide against children that he deemed unworthy. So what kind of people do you think he'd enchant the hat to put in Slytherin? Since its inception, Slytherin has been the house of pureblood supremacy. Almost all proud pureblood wizarding families want their kids in Slytherin. Those kids get to Hogwarts with their parents' racist pureblood ideas still forming in their brains. Those children are immediately sent to live in the basement with all the other racists. Now, I don't have any formal training or education in sociology, but I did a little bit of research, and it turns out that sending a bunch of racists to live together in a basement is a bad idea. Hogwarts does everything it can to physically and socially isolate Slytherins. The school's official Quidditch commentator openly mocks Slytherin every single match they play. Teachers like Hagrid wear anti-Slytherin bias on their sleeve. Dumbledore! I just want to throw some ideas out here, alright? What if Hogwarts did literally anything to de-radicalize Slytherins? What if they made and encouraged opportunities for Slytherins to get out of their comfort zone and talk to half-blood or muggle-born witches and wizards that didn't already agree with their ideas? What if their ideas were challenged, maybe even disproven? What if they did anything that wasn't sending all the racists to live together in the basement? I have more important things to get to later. So just real quick, let's take a quick tour of the castle itself, get a feel for what life would be like for 10 months out of the year, because Hogwarts students only get 2 months summer vacation. Imagine a subway system with 142 trains and no schedule. That's the stairs at Hogwarts. If you want to get anywhere on time, you have to memorize all of their schedules yourself, and then just hope they're in the right mood to take you to Charms today. And even when you do manage to find the right staircase that takes you to the right place, you still have to memorize every single one of the trick steps on all 142 staircases to make sure your foot won't go through and send your skull on a collision course with the concrete. And even when you do get to the right hall, guess what? Some of the doors are fake. Some of the doors demand to be asked politely in order to open. Some of the doors are freaks and won't be opened unless they're tickled. This might all sound charming and whimsical, and I guess it would be, up until the moment your teacher assigns you a 15-page essay because you were 15 minutes late to class because the school itself decided, hey, you know what? You're not going. I don't feel like it. Now, after all that, you'd probably want to, sit down for a second, maybe have a good cry, maybe find somewhere private to just get yourself together. Except guess what? There's no place like that because apparently privacy is a muggle concept. Your common room is for your entire house. Your dormitory is shared with everyone of your year. All of the halls are filled with gossipy portraits of dead people. Now, even if, despite all this, you somehow find a little corner of respite just for yourself, there is no guarantee that a ghost won't just come bursting through the wall at you. If Hermione has taught us anything, it's that the only good place to cry in Hogwarts is in already haunted bathrooms where everyone's canonically least favorite ghost is already crying and perving on you in the bathroom. If you want to have any kind of secret in Hogwarts, you gotta build a whole chamber for it. So what's the reward for all this? Why should you even try? Knowledge. Outside of unusual circumstances, a first-year student has 8 required classes at Hogwarts. Most of them make sense. Charms, for example, is one of the most useful kinds of magic and is taught by none other than Professor Phileas Flitwick, the best teacher at all of Hogwarts, objectively speaking. Can I get a hand for him? Can we get a hand for him? Can we hear from Phileas Flitwick? Can we hear from Phileas Flitwick? Can we get a hand for the big man? Can we get a hand for the big man? Can I get an amen? Can I get a hallelujah? History of magic, defense against the dark arts, transfiguration, potions. They're all useful. They're all good. They all teach witchcraft and wizardry. That's what Hogwarts is supposed to do. There's also flying, because apparently airborne driver's ed is a great idea for 11-year-olds. We will come back to that part. Hogwarts, for the most part, has a pretty solid curriculum for teaching its students witchcraft and wizardry. And that's fine. That's what it wants to do. But then you have astronomy. Astronomy is the closest thing Hogwarts has to an actual science class. Now, to be clear, this isn't about Geminis, liberals, and candy corns. No. That's astrology, that's part of divination, that's another course, that's an elective, and everyone hates it. Astronomy students just memorize the names, positions, and movements of stars, planets, constellations, moons, and everything else for 5 years. It's a required class for 5 years. Why is this required? What purpose can astronomy possibly have in witchcraft and wizardry? I've found headcanon after headcanon trying to explain this one, but there's no actual official source that makes astronomy in any way relevant to magic. I mean, yeah, there are some potion ingredients that need to be picked under the right phase of the moon, but that's a footnote in potions class, not 5 years of its own whole mandatory thing. No one ever says, oh yeah, Flipendo is more powerful if you use it when Jupiter is in alignment with Mars. Duh. The worst part is, they're bad at it. For their final exam, Professor Sinistra gives her students a blank star chart and sends them to the astronomy tower at midnight to fill it all out. One of the things that Harry has to fill out is Venus. And if you have a 6th grader's understanding of the solar system, you'd see where the problem is. At midnight, we are pointed exactly away from the sun. Venus is closer to the sun in orbit than us. We are pointed exactly opposite of Venus. We cannot see it. And you know what isn't part of the core curriculum? Basic reading and writing classes. There is no official elementary school for wizards, so they're all getting there with, at most, a 5th grade level of reading comprehension skills. From there on out, they only get textbooks. They get a load of textbooks. They get so many textbooks every year that they just have to read and then kind of understand on their own, I guess. They also have to write a ton of essays. So many essays. Essays that are a big part of the OWLs, the only important test they ever take in their entire schooling careers. And they also have to just figure that part out on their own. I guess reading comprehension isn't important enough to be taking away from the precious, precious moments you could be spending studying the rings of Saturn. Speaking of things that apparently aren't as important as Pluto, Muggle studies. You know, the class where you'd learn about the history and the culture and the technology of most of the world. You know, the class where you'd learn the things that you need to do in order to blend in with the rest of society and not violate the International Statute of Secrecy, which is the most important law in the entire wizarding world. You can't waste time on that. You can't waste time on that. You can't waste time on knowing how the rest of the world lives. You can't waste time on knowing how to keep your own gosh dang secrets. You gotta know the moons, man. You gotta know the stars, man. It literally took a terrorist invasion of the school for Muggle studies to become a required class. And look, I'm not saying he was right. Voldemort might have had some good ideas. This is where it all began. This is why I spent the last 4 months of my life yelling at everyone I come in contact with about Hogwarts. It is all thanks to this woman, the airborne trauma dispensary herself, Rolanda Hoot. Teachers at Hogwarts come in all shapes and sizes. Pomona Sprout is lovely. Phileas Flipwig is the best. Can we get a hand for him? Can we get a hand for Flipwig? Can we hear it for Flipwig? Can we hear it for Flipwig? Can I get an amen? Can I get an amen? Can I get a please don't tell a joke again? Can I get a please don't tell a joke again? Someone please tell me stop doing this joke again! Now, some of these classes are dangerous, but it can be argued that those are unavoidable and, in fact, useful risks. If you're learning botany, you gotta know which plants are the dangerous ones. You gotta know what the dangers are, and you gotta know the safety precautions to deal with them. And Pomona Sprout does all of this great. Other teachers, like Hagrid, don't do it as well, but I mean, come on, are you really gonna sign up for Care of Magical Creatures without expecting at least a little bit of something spicy in your class every day? A little bit of adventure, a little bit of excitement, a little bit of paprika in your schedule? My point is, there are classes that are dangerous because that danger is inherent to their subject matter. And then there are classes like Flying with Marimba Pooch! First off, why is this a required class? It's not like this is their only form of transportation. They can just walk into a fireplace, or grab an old boot, or literally teleport. You are taking 11-year-olds and putting them in a mandatory hands-on driver's ed class on flying motorcycles. Now this could be okay if you had someone who is competent. If you had someone who cared, someone who really wanted to make every kid feel comfortable and make sure that all of them were safe. Instead, you got Rolanda Hoot! Now this woman sees Neville Longbottom a student who doesn't want to fly, but was forced into this by Hogwarts' flawless curriculum. She sees this panicked child, clearly out of control, spinning around on his broom. And what does she do? She stands there, both feet on the ground, and yells at him to come down. Hey, Rolanda, do you think he doesn't want to come down? Do you think he's screaming and crying and smashing into walls as part of a funny prank on you, Rolanda? Ooh, wait, I have an idea. How about you take one of the broomsticks and go after him, Rolanda? How about you do literally anything, Rolanda? Oh, wait, I know why you don't do that. Because that would be a good idea. And you're allergic to those. And look, I know that wizards can cure just about anything. I know that a broken wrist is a minor inconvenience. But that doesn't matter. This same fall, at a slightly different angle, would have broken Neville's neck instead of his wrist, and I don't care how much bone juice you got. A dead kid is a dead kid! I'll cool down for a second here. I mean, let's be reasonable. There's really not a lot that Rolanda Hoof could have done here, you know? There's really not a lot she could have done to protect Neville. I mean, it's not like there's any kind of cushioning charm that already comes pre-installed in most brooms and on the field of most quiz pitches to, you know, cushion impacts that she could have cast on Neville to protect him, like Hermione did on 5 other people and a minecart in Book 7. I mean, it's not like there's a spell specifically called Arresto Momentum that specifically works to slow a falling object that Dumbledore used on Harry in Book 3 when he was falling off his broom after getting attacked by a Dementor. It's not like these were school official brooms that they were using, that she had plenty of time to install any number of safety precautions like a height limit or a speed limit or a magical emergency brake that she could activate. And, you know, it's not like this is the only class she teaches all year outside of refereeing 6 Quidditch games, which is the entirety of her responsibilities, which, you know, would definitely have given her a lot of time to practice and prepare and train for this exact, very likely scenario. It's not like any of that could happen. Oh, wait! Teachers like Rolanda are in charge of house points, the third most confusing thing about Hogwarts. Number 1 is why it's allowed to be open, and number 2 is why everyone's okay with slave labor. The house points decide who wins the House Cup, which is, as far as I can tell, completely and entirely meaningless. All year, the students are divided into tribes and kept in constant competition for the grand prize of getting their favorite color on the last day of school. The only real prize the House Cup has ever had was in the first 2 games where it decided who got to go to the bonus bean room, thus making those games the best pieces of Harry Potter media ever produced. I will fight you on that, and I will win because I am right. The House Cup's real purpose is making sure that no inter-house friendships are formed. Those are not your fellow students. Those are your enemies that you must fight tooth and nail for your right to the bonus bean room. And the fact that this works, that a significant amount of students really invest in the House Cup, in this meaningless trophy that will never help them in any significant way, bean room notwithstanding, is the most realistic part of the entire franchise. But what doesn't make sense is everything else around it. There's no scale for how many points an action should be worth. Take a look at this. Taking a library book outside, minus 5 points. Getting to class late, minus 10 points. Answering a question right in class, plus 10 points. Attempting to steal a valuable item from a classmate in direct view of a professor, no change in points. Stopping said thievery, again, in direct view of that same professor, also no change in points. Putting your life in danger by going looking for a 12-foot tall 1-ton mountain troll, minus 5 points. Putting your own life in danger specifically to save your friend from that 12-foot tall 1-ton mountain troll, plus 5 points. Being in the hall at night, minus 50 points. Willingly getting severely injured so that your friend the Chosen One can go stop the Dark Lord from committing genocide against the student body, 50 points. Being in the hallway at night, minus 50 points. There is no consistency here. And that's really important when this is your school's principal way of rewarding good behavior and punishing bad behavior. This is the school pride and honor and prestige that you are convinced of, that you're told you need to work for. So tell me, Dinkelberg, why is everyone out here playing Ivy League Calvin ball? Well, I'll tell you why. It's because Hogwarts is and always has been run by cretinous fools. Headmaster of Hogwarts has always been a highly respected position, one held by wizards of great esteem and greater stupidity. For evidence, look no further than Armando Dippet. I'm not sorry. I meant that. He's the worst. On June 13th, 1943, the day Columbus sailed the ocean blue, Myrtle Warren, one of Headmaster Dippet's students, was murdered. By the time her body was found, Myrtle was already a ghost. Now, with the deceased student there and available for questioning, did Armando Dippet or anyone who works for him ask what happened? Apparently not, because if they had asked her, she would have been able to tell them that right before she died, the last thing she remembered was a pair of big glowing yellow eyes. And from there, they could have deduced that the most likely culprit was a basilisk, because there's nothing else in the entire wizarding world that can kill you with its eyes. And as far as I can tell, there's no other means of instantaneous death that remotely resembles two big glowing yellow eyes. Sure, basilisks aren't that common. But maybe then they could have kept investigating. Maybe then they could have found the Chamber of Secrets that a teenager had found and opened earlier that year. And maybe they could have got the genocide superweapon out of their school. That'd be a pretty good thing, I think. But what did the Dipster do instead? Apparently he did absolutely nothing, because instead of getting any sort of factual information, he let a student named Tom Riddle convince him that she was actually killed by an acromantula, a giant magical man-eating spider that is known for its desire to eat human flesh. So the Little Dipper just rolls with the idea that this magical spider, known for its desire to eat human flesh, somehow got into the girl's bathroom, killed a girl without leaving a single bite wound or puncture mark, and then just left an entire person there without even trying to eat her. A story that would have been immediately disproven if they asked the deceased how she died. Because remember, she saw two big yellow glowing eyes, not 8 tiny little beady black ones. Now you can look at this in two ways. Either A, it's a headmaster desperately looking for a scapegoat and ruining an innocent life in the process of trying to cover his own butt so he can keep his mediocre school open. Or B, he's really just for sale, baby brain, never used. And no matter how you look at it, this is a criminal failure to keep your students safe. And apparently, that's a Hogwarts tradition, since it goes all the way to the present with the one and only Albus Dalbus Dumbledore. You know when Michael Jordan tried to play baseball? That's Dumbledore. He is an immensely powerful wizard, the only man in the entire world that Voldemort fears. He has a vast and impressive set of skills, One that does not translate at all to running a school. The headmaster of Hogwarts hasn't put away his varsity jacket in 60 years because he has a deep, burning hatred of Slytherin that he wears on his sleeve. Everyone knows about how he taunted Slytherin by suddenly yanking the house cup out from under their feet. But it goes deeper. You know what's going on. It's Halloween. Everyone's gathered at Hogwarts, having a good old time, having a great big old fall festival dinner, celebrating Satan or whatever it is they do over there. Then suddenly, Professor Quirrell comes busting in, yelling about something. What's he yelling about? It's a troll. There's a troll in the dungeon. If the Dumbledorian wanted to keep his students safe, then he's already in the perfect situation, because the entire student body is gathered together in one location, with all of their teachers around them. Teachers who are very powerful wizards who could do a whole lot to secure the location. What does he do instead? He sends all the students back to their common rooms. Now, this might sound like a good idea, because Gryffindor and Ravenclaw, they're both in their towers. They'll be fine. Hufflepuff has some secret entrance underneath the kitchen. They'll be fine. But Slytherin. Where's Slytherin's common room? Where's the troll? It's in the dungeon! It's in the freaking dungeon! Do you see how this is a downgrade in security for Slytherin? This old man is sending children to die because of an old school rivalry. What other explanation is there? He's bad at his job? Yeah, that too, I guess. And that's not the only terrible decision from Dinkelberg. No, not by a long shot. Consider how his tenure has been for the Defense Against the Dark Arts department. So the explanation is that Tom Riddle, aka Voldemort, put a jinx on the position of Teacher of Defense Against the Dark Arts after he was denied it after he applied it because he was like 17 or something. Since then, no teacher has held the job for more than a year. And this is the one spot where I'm gonna call BS on textual evidence. There is no way this jinx is real. There is no other jinx, nay, no other spell in the entire series that can possibly affect something so nebulous as a job. Every other jinx, every other spell has one clear target. The dangling jinx Levicorpus lifts someone into the air. The leak jinx makes leaks come out of someone's ears. Duck-a-Firth turns you into a duck, and it's the best spell anyone's ever invented, so it makes sense. It's in the Lego games. I mean, come on, it's the freaking Harry Potter, Lego Harry Potter. How can it not be the best thing ever made? How can it not? But a jinx on a job, a position, a post, something inherently intangible, something that by all existing logic should have to be recast on every new teacher to take the job. There is no other spell in the entire series that works remotely in this way, and the only source we have to confirm it is Alberius Dumbledorius himself. Now, I don't know about you, but to me, it seems a lot more likely that Donkey Kong made it up to cover up how many of his Defense Against the Dark Arts teachers were dying on the job due to his unsafe work environment. Of course, not all of them died. Of the pre-power Defense Against the Dark Arts teachers that we know about, all but one had to leave because they were really, really, really bad at their jobs. And the last one, Patricia Rakepick, had to leave because she was found out as a member of the Wizard Illuminati. And even if we take the very, very generous interpretation that the jinx is real, you know what else is real? Counter jinxes, spells intended specifically to remove the effects of jinxes. Either 1. Dumbledore, the most powerful wizard in the world, the one man that Voldemort fears, sitting there in a tower with access to all the knowledge of the wizarding world and a ton of ancient powerful artifacts, including the Sorcerer's Stone, still isn't good enough of a wizard to find a way to dispel a jinx, literally the least severe kind of dark magic. Or 2, he really just didn't feel like finding a way to stop the jinx. So take your pick, cause I'm not sure which one is worse. And even though he has to find a new teacher every single year, does he find good ones? Does he find competent ones even? No! Instead, he hires Gilderoy freaking Lockhart! As stated on wizardingworld.gov, Dumbledore was suspicious of Lockhart. Why? Because he personally knew two of the wizards whose memories Boy Toy Flockshart had stolen and taken credit for in his books. So what did Dimpledan do? He hired this man to come teach at his school for an entire year because he thought putting him in a classroom would be the easiest way to expose him as a fraud. So Dumbledore knowingly and willingly set up a full year of terrible education in what he knew would be the one most important life-saving class for all his students in the very near future. Because, you know, the whole Voldemort thing that was going on, he knew about that. Just to expose one guy as a liar. Albert, could you not have done the same thing by inviting him to be a guest speaker? Could he not have accomplished your purposes by letting him be a substitute teacher for a week? Albie, buddy, if you think about it for more than 3 seconds, it does kind of seem like a bad idea to take the world-renowned heartthrob author wizard that can magically roofie people and give him a position where he will be in close quarters with most of his underage, teenage, impressionable fangirls on a daily basis. 'Cause that's never gone wrong for anyone, especially not here on YouTube.com. And to cap it all off, on top of student endangerment, on top of staff mismanagement, on top of everything, Dumbledore has committed the singular, most gross and irresponsible crime any educational professional can commit. Not once in his entire 25-year tenure as Hogwarts headmaster did a single class ever have a pizza party. This man is a monster. Look, I get it. Hogwarts is an appealing fantasy. It's fun to imagine yourself living in a cool old castle with all your friends, running around, doing magic, and getting into all sorts of trouble. But the way it's set up within the canon just wouldn't work. You would not like it. You would not have a fun time. If you don't have anxiety now, you would catch it within a week. At the end of the day, I'm just another bargain bin Bo Burnham getting way too passionate about media on the internet. I'm not here to take that fantasy away from you. I just need you to know that it doesn't need to involve Hogwarts. In fact, I'd say it shouldn't involve Hogwarts. And that's just because Ilvermorny is right here, y'all. They don't use slave labor. They pay their weird little magic guys. They named a house after their weird little magic guys because they respect them so much. They recognize you don't always fit into one neat little box for a house. So if you fit into more than one, guess what? You get to choose. You get to have autonomy over your destiny. You can choose your path, not just some hat full of stinky old ghosts. Ain't that better? Ain't that incredible? Also, it's in America, so if Death Deals try taking over here, they getting the Glock.